Thank you, Moitri. That meant a lot. President Garber, Provost Manning, and fellow alumni. Thank you for inviting me here to speak. It means so much. Alumni Day has apparently drawn a record 9,000 attendees this year. I think I know why. Lately, I too have been hungry to connect with others in this community. Certainly, this is a chance to reminisce and to catch up with friends. But we are also here to rally around this institution in a perilous time. Let me tell you some of what I have seen. I'm a child of Indian immigrants who came here for medical training, and I was raised in rural Ohio where they practiced as physicians. I too became a doctor and came to have more than 3 decades at Harvard in surgery and in public health. What I learned here led to an opportunity in January of 2022 to take a leave to lead global health at the U.S. Agency for International Development. It was the best job you've probably never heard of. I led 2,500 health professionals in more than 65 countries, and with less than half the budget of the Mass General Brigham, where I work, about $24 per American taxpayer, they saved lives by the millions and contained disease threats all across the world. Now, before I departed the agency at the end of my term on January 20 of this year, I briefed the Senate Foreign Relations Committee about several initiatives poised to transform global health because of American public health research and science. For example, I mentioned the rollout of a breakthrough single-shot drug that prevents HIV for up to a year, which has the potential to end the AIDS pandemic. Preparations for 3 promising TB vaccines currently in trials, and the deployment of an inexpensive package of therapies proven to reduce post-childbirth hemorrhaging, the leading cause of maternal deaths in the world, by 60%. The incoming administration had every reason to advance such initiatives. Congress had already allocated the funding with bipartisan support, but instead we got surgery with a chainsaw. I watched from the sidelines in horror as the new administration, ignoring congressional directives, purged staff, terminated 86% of USAID's programs, kneecapped the rest, and shuttered the agency. In doing this, they dismantled America's largest civilian capacity abroad, our primary vehicle of soft power, dedicated to advancing global stability, peace, economic prosperity, and survival. And they did it in a way that maximized human suffering, loss of life, and waste of taxpayer dollars. Now, during this terrible time, I talked to many former colleagues at USAID who were under immense pressure to take troubling actions outside of established procedures. For example, to dismiss fellow employees or to recommend terminating life-saving programs under the fiction of eliminating fraud and waste. They needed an ear and sometimes advice. And I found myself relying more on my experience with surgical patients than with public health policy. And that is what I'd like to tell you about today. I graduated from Harvard Medical School 30 years ago this month. What I loved most about medical school was the invitation into people's lives and the chance to help solve some of their most frightening problems. Every clinical rotation provided me an opportunity for that. But it was the operating room that captivated me. I remember, for example, the case of a college student with infectious mononucleosis. The infection had caused his spleen to enlarge and rupture, and he arrived in the emergency room in hemorrhagic shock. The team could barely detect a blood pressure. By the time we had him on the operating table and under anesthesia, he was on the verge of cardiac arrest. The surgical resident opened the young man's belly in 2 decisive moves. With a knife, he made a swift slash down the middle, through the skin, from the rib cage to below the belly button. And then with open scissors, he pushed upwards through the linea alba, the fibrous tendon that runs vertically between the abdominal muscles. Blood burst out of him, and the resident plunged his hand into the opening. The attending surgeon stood across from him, asking in an eerily calm, quiet voice, "Have you got it?" "Now you have 30 more seconds." And suddenly the resident had freed the spleen and lifted it to the surface. It was fleshy and heavy, and blood was pouring from its torn capsule. The attending surgeon put a clamp across its tether of blood vessels, and the bleeding stopped instantly. The patient was saved. I mean, how can you not love that? Fixing people with your own hands, I had to learn how to do that. And surgery proved to be deeply gratifying work. I fixed a lot of people. And yet I was not prepared for how many people would come to me with problems I could not fix. Chronic diseases, incurable diseases, issues of frailty, terminal conditions. How was I supposed to help with these problems? What did it mean to excel at that? I explored these questions by writing about them. And for my book, Being Mortal, I interviewed more than 200 people with unfixable problems. I also spoke with their family members and scores of people trained to help them: geriatric social workers, palliative care doctors, hospital nurses. Among the people I spoke to was an 89-year-old woman I'll call Mrs. Kittredge. She had congestive heart failure, debilitating arthritis, a series of falls, and no choice but to leave her Delray Beach condo for a nursing home. She'd picked a place up here near her daughter. It was safe, had excellent ratings, and nice staff. But a month into her stay, Mrs. Kittredge was wretchedly unhappy. She wanted more from life than simply physical safety. "I know I can't do what I used to, but this feels like a hospital, not a home," she said to me. The nursing home's priorities were things like avoiding bed sores, maintaining weight, preventing falls, important medical goals, but well short of a meaningful life. Mrs. Kittredge had traded an airy condo she'd decorated herself for a small beige room with a stranger for a roommate and a single cupboard for her belongings. Her days were governed by a rigid schedule: waking, dressing, meals, medications, activity time, bed. But she felt she had so much still to offer. "I want to be helpful, play a role," she said. She used to make jewelry and volunteer in a library. Playing bingo and watching movies couldn't be all there was anymore. We continually fail to recognize that people have other priorities besides just living longer. The experts I spoke to for Being Mortal taught me how to elicit these priorities by asking the right questions. Questions like, what is your understanding of what lies ahead with your health? What are your fears should your situation worsen? What are your hopes? What are you willing and not willing to sacrifice for the possibility of more time? What is essential to you for your quality of life? When I asked Mrs. Kittredge what was essential to her life, she was clear. Friendships, purpose to my days, and privacy, she said. It was the best living will ever. She'd spelled out exactly what her caregivers should help her preserve and never sacrifice.